Okay, much better now. And let me adjust the camera a little bit. And we're going to start to talk about some of the kind of not so intuitive part of the real estate investment, including the organization forms and the joint ventures. Most of these are not really useful if you're individual investors and trying to do everything by yourself, or if your investment scale is kind of small. But once you grow to a certain level, you will have to start dealing with these. So better to know them. Okay. Yeah, I would say, well, depending on your purpose, sometimes some of them, even if you are, especially if you are not directly the developer, but you are part of the team, like an advisor, a consultant, you want yourself to be one of this kind of four firms. Okay, so to begin with, to begin the discussion, sole proprietorship, everybody knows. Partnership, everybody knows. Financial management lesson 101, right? So general partnership, limited partnership. So basically, limited liability partnership is the fancy one. The LLP. Okay. What kind of firms the Sam has? Sam has a brokerage firm, and he has, I think most of his people were brought on by contractors. So I think he was just, I actually don't know. Is it LLP or LLC? Not sure. He owns it, THO, LLC, are two separate entities. Yes, they are two different kind. Uh, So he partnered with his partnership. So I think it's at least a partnership. So maybe it's a limited liability partnership. Not sure. Maybe it's just a limit. It's a general partnership. Okay, I can check with him. Okay, so if you're a limited liability partnership LLP, then you have limited liability, apparently. You have a pass-through taxation, so you don't have two different levels. You only have one level at the income level. Not terminated by the death of the partner. Okay, so if anybody dies, it's not the same. Then ALC is same limited liability pass through, but it's basically an LLP, but plus allows passive investors. So basically, you can have someone who are not going to be actively doing anything and just going to take their own little share of the interest from their investment. So by the state law, all these conditions to register for LLP and LLC are different, and conversion tax, and there's insurance requirements and things like that. It's a flexible management structure, so it can be a member managed or it can be a manager managed. And there's corporations. The huge traditional corporations in real estate market is not that many. Okay, not that many. There are some, but a lot of them C corp, S corp. So C corp is taxable, okay, and it's granted by the state, and it has shareholders. The shareholders can be natural person or it can be business entities, okay, and it has a liquid shares. So its equity holders can really sell, buy, really liquid. And then you can have S corp. S corp is shareholders no more than 100 shareholders. So you cannot just randomly buy and sell to infinite amount of people. No corporations as shareholders. Okay. No resident alien investors. People like me. I can probably still invest. I'm a resident alien for tax purpose, but there are people who are like coming abroad. Say a European investor will come here just for the investment purpose. They may not be able to invest in a S corp. Okay, so no more than one class of stock. Okay, so usually we talk about common stock, but for the smaller private companies, they can also have common stock that doesn't have voting rights. They can have preferred stock that have voting right. You can basically structure it any way you want. You can structure many different classes, and but for S corp, you can only have one class of stock. Okay. So all the shareholders are the same, and none of them are corporation. All of them are individuals. Okay, most of them domestic. Then no more than 100. So make sure you have to make sure that this S corp is super small in order for you to enjoy the benefit of pass-through taxation. And the major form of real estate, especially in development, is the joint ventures. So they're formed to achieve a certain objective, for example, of risk sharing. Maybe you have the land and you want to entitle it and get all the zonings and things done. And then if you entitled, and then I will be coming in and build a whole building, right? We are good for, and then the other company is consulting and they provide a legal service and all the terms and all that. So it can be many different parties. They come together, they contribute their own expertise together with some capital. Okay, it can be a developer, can be operator, can be a sponsor, can be investor, and then they share the risk and share the profit. So most likely for a speculative objectives, the goal is to somehow earn money. If it doesn't work out, then everybody loses out. So joint ventures can take any of these organizational forms. It can be partnership, it can corp, or it can be a trust. So usually, this first stage is the initial capital contributions. We have an investor and partners plus some expertise. For example, 90% from investor, then 10% from other expertise. Okay, so the expertise can be a developer who actually know how to build things, operator. Okay, we get more cash flow than his proportion of initial capital contributions because they are kind of getting paid back for whatever the contribution of the expertise they're providing. Sharing cash flow minus the operations. So cash flow operation is equal to the net operating income minus the debt service, right? So if you take the net operating income that we previously have taken, that does not count in the mortgage payment and all that, minus the debt debt service, which that mortgage payment, principal payment, and that's why we don't call it interest payment, because sometimes you also have principal payment included in the mortgage payment. So whatever is left is your cash flow, right? So if you are going to share the cash flow in proportion to your contribution, then that's what we call the pari passu distribution. And you can be somehow preferred to some part, maybe have a preferred return to investor partner. Sometimes have disproportionate, depending on the term negotiated, whoever is going to get a slightly bigger share. Sometimes it's cumulative, sometimes it's non-cumulative, and say, okay, cumulatively you have to be proportional. Sometimes it's non-cumulative and say this every single period you have to be proportional. Okay, so a good example for that is on the book between page 592 and 593. Just for one moment. Okay, do you have the book with you? All right. How many of you don't have the book? Do you have the book with you? Yes or no? Okay, most of you say yes. Some of you say no. Okay, let me. Let me see. Just one moment. Let me try to pull it up here. Okay. Download. Okay, let's see if I can share files. Okay. So can we turn? Can I somehow turn it? Oh. Oh dear, oh dear. Not very successful. Come on, people. You can show my download folder without problem, computer. Oh dear. Okay, so just one moment. Let me. Okay. Share files. Then stop that one. Take it, and let's see. Can we get it better? Okay, much better. Much better. Can we get it bigger? No. Okay, so basically the return for this one must be calculated first to reflect a 5% preferred return, okay? And then we are going to look at all the cash flow. So looking at the second page. Okay, so how does it look like? Well, it has initial equity investment, okay, cash flow from operation is all of these numbers, okay, cash flow from sale eventually is if the total cash flow that's available to the joint venture is basically all these numbers kind of copied from over there, right? So then how are we going to get distributed between these parties? So initial 5% distribution and 50% share in cash flow available after the initial distribution. Okay, so we have ICI and the PDI, then total distribution of operating cash flow. So in the first 2 years, it's basically distributing everything out, right? So then in the third year, after the initial distribution of 5%, you also had a 50% share in cash flow. Okay, so in the total distribution is a little bit higher. And notice in the third year, the total available is 5 million, right? So then after you take the initial, you are going to take the 50% share, then whatever is distributed is 3.5 million. So the total distribution is a little bit less. It's a little bit less than the 5 million here. And the same thing happens the next year. So while the total available is 6 million, you distributed 4 million. Okay, so that is for PDI. that's ICI. Okay, for the PDI, then they get the rest of it. So whatever is extra, the whatever is not given to the ICI was going to the PDI. Does that make sense? So for year 3, 5 million, amount of 5 million, ICI got 3.5, then PDI got 1.5. Okay. So that's because the initial 5% distribution given to PDI is a lot lower compared to ICI. Then they have a 50-50% share. Okay, so overall PDI is getting less. So reconcile everything. If you cash flow distributed to PDI, cash flow distributed to ICI, then add it up, it will be equal to the cash flow available to distribution. Does that make sense? Any question on this? Okay, so basically how they actually divvy it up, most likely from some kind of pre-identified agreement. Okay, so where were we? We were the joint venture, property sale. Okay. Right. So, if we just talked about the property operations, and that's how it's going to get divvied up. What about we have a property sale? So first of all, after the property sale, of course, you have to repay any debt. You have to the return of initial investment if it's not repaid previously. Okay, usually, then the remainder will get distributed in the predetermined portions. Sometimes it will be IRR preference. Okay, so one will have a slightly higher IRR in order to calculate it. And the other one will be the IRR look back and say, historically, if you're using IRR in a certain way, historical numbers, and I could be using the other one. Okay, so, well, I don't want to take another picture, but the next page in 594. So the same joint venture got sold for the sale of 75 million, and return of capital to investor capital Inc. is ICI 45, to PDI 5 million. Okay, so remember they had a different investment in it. That's why their 5% of initial investment is different, right? So then the preferred IRR to Investor Capital Inc., the ICI, then is 16 million A01. So that's because when they were negotiating, the negotiators say that ICI is going to have a preferred IRR of exactly 12%. So then they have to get paid a little bit extra to get that 16.8 million. So remaining cash flow to be split is going to be half and half. That makes sense. So you take whatever return of capital, you take after the cash fund sale, you pay the remaining debt, you take away the return all the capital investment back, and then you calculate for any preferred IRR and say, okay, I need to have at least 12% in here. So you give me that amount of money back in order to make it at 12% per se. Whatever that's remaining, we're going to split half and half. Any question on that? Okay, sounds like a pretty easy deal. Okay, so that's a joint venture. And then we start talking about the syndications. So syndications are formed to acquire, develop, manage, and operate and market real estate. So is not really a organizational form, not like a partnership or anything kind of. Usually, it's most likely partnership, and it's a private offering. So, what is a syndicate? A syndicate is basically having a pool of investors all chip in order to raise a huge fund for a huge project. Does that make sense? So buy and sell side don't know who each others are. The sell sides know that the buy side is a syndicate. So the buy side may or may not know who are the other ones in the syndicate. Okay, so usually it will be a reputable party that's organizing the whole thing. What? Why do I accidentally? What? What? That's interesting. So, oh, it comes mystery and goes as a mystery. Okay, so financial considerations, initial equity contributions. Okay, so how much you put in initially, future assessment provision. Okay, so ideally you want a periodical reassessment and say how is the whole thing's doing. Distribution allocation. Okay, of course, if you have any profit, how are we going to divvy it up? And then the capital accounts, and we need to make sure that they have a separate capital account in there. So if you want to evaluate the investment, if you've grown your wealth to a certain size, yes. But for syndicate, the purpose of it is to make it to open to smaller investors. That makes sense. So basically, if you think that only multi-billion investment are making money right now, the syndicate now is open the door to smaller investors and say, oh yeah, if you have like $500,000, maybe you can chip in the syndicate. Okay, but yeah, before you really get into that, you really have to look into the details of this investment. Okay, so what about laws and same distribution process? Well, I think for syndicate, I don't know. It will be detailed in individual cases. So first of all, it will specify how the risk and return is going to be. So we are going to. So that's actually a good question. Can you keep that question for the guest speaker? So if we have a syndicate, how is it gonna usually? What do they see in the market and say, okay, how are things really handled? So compensation to syndicator, general partner can carve out of fees. Okay, is there any equity investment by the syndicator, or these are all the questions need to be asked by the contract and whoever is looking into the contract. Okay, so you going to the general partner, their limited partner. So whatever form it is, the syndicate is a really kind of less regulated, very fluid and flexible kind of structure. So you really have to look into case by case, and sometimes the general partner can avoid a fee, sometimes they cannot. Sometimes the equity investment. Sometimes the syndicator put in some equity investment, which means the equity can be actually lost. But sometimes the syndicator is providing it as an investor, so they will have some kind of form of guaranteeing their investment back. It can have a substantial economic effect. Okay, so what was an allocation reflected by by an adjustment to the capital account. So equalizing capital accounts, and it can be, say, adjust the cash flow distributed to partners and change the allocation of the gain from sale. So gain change chargeback method. So basically, depending on how it is going to be affected, the capital account itself, that is the pool of all the money, will be adjusted. Okay, so if we look at page 607 and page 608, this one is an example of the gain counts and gain chargebacks. Okay, so assume A and B form a partnership where A, the limited partner, contributes 100,000, and B, the general partner, contributes no cash. The partnership secures 400 grand non-recourse loan and acquires AB apartments for 500 grand, right? So both of them put down a little bit of money, okay, not that much if you're talking about real estate. Assume that the results from the first year of operation of AB apartments are the following. If we look at the gross income and everything, before tax cash flow, you got $5,000, okay, from the first year. Well, is it good? Doesn't look that much, but okay. So assume the tax depreciation for the first year is this, then the taxable income. The taxable income is from the net operating income less depreciation and everything, so it's 45,000. So then for the capital account after first year of operations, say A's capital account and the B's capital account initially will be initial equity contribution minus the loss allocation. Okay, so this is, well, this is an example of how they is counting for the losses, right? So it's a huge loss that they are getting because they only get a cash flow of 5,000 and they wind up paying a lot of capital property tax. So they share the loss, and then the cash flow minus the cash flow distribution for A is 4,500, for B is 500, and the ending balance is the capital account for B is negative, right? So assume that it's sold after year one for 550 with no expense of sale. Oh, that would be a nice deal. Then we have a gain at the bottom of that page. We have a gain of 100,000. So minus the mortgage, we're going to have a cash flow of 150,000. So now, how are we going to get the gain charge back? So if we look at the bottom of page 608, so A's capital account, B's capital account, starting at 5500, A's capital account 55,000 remaining. B's capital account has negative 5,000 remaining, right? So return of the original equity, so whatever you paid, pay you back. And then 50% of gain is 50,000 for each one, and 50% of remaining cash proceeds. Okay, so then ending balance is that I don't understand why ending balance is for A's is a negative. Maybe I need to take a second look at this. I know that for the gains the gains chargeback in the bottom part, see, it kind of eliminates this loophole that B is actually having a positive and A is having a negative. Let me keep it until next time and look more detailed. Something in my mind is not reconciling. I'm sorry. Let me look in more detail about this gain chargeback method. When I look at it last time, it all makes sense, but it doesn't make sense right now anymore. Okay. I'm sorry, we have to pull ahead. And there are public and private syndicates. Okay, so done by different kind of association. And have you ever had any experience with syndicates before? Do you guys have any prior experience? No? Yeah, I've never actually talked to anyone who has actually invested in a syndicate. We can ask the guest speaker to compensate for my lack of industrial experience. Okay, so so between the private and the public syndicates, the regulation is different. So for regulation D says that accredited investor, there can be security issuers, officers, directors, and what are these rules? Why is this all looking so unfamiliar to me? Am I using the same slides that I built? Okay, maybe I'm using another set of slides. Okay, I'm sorry, but let me just stop here because I am totally in cloud. What's the logic behind all of these? Let me research these and put it as a part. Next time as the online part, I'll start from, I think, where we drop off in the syndicates. And I'm sorry about that. And we're gonna just let you go a little bit earlier. Is it okay? Allow me to dig into these a little bit deeper. So really, I don't want to give you any wrong information. Okay. So next time, remember, we're not going to meet online. It will be not a regular non-virtual online class in which I'll record whatever I'm going to talk about it in the PowerPoint, and then I'll upload it online. Okay, so wait for my email towards Friday, maybe a little, I don't know, maybe a little earlier, or I can just post it on Blackboard and post a link to the YouTube, and so you can look at it. Okay, so again, no class meeting next week. Study material online. Watch my video next week. Okay, so I will stop recording.